for the question, Representative Moylan, and I appreciate the focus that you brought. Now, I want to just start by saying thank you for all the work that we went into making sure that the H-2B visa extension was in the FY24 NDAA, because we understand that before we can program all of that stuff, the workforce has to be available. So we'll definitely be putting that to good use. In terms of specific responses, I'll have to get back to you on a schedule. But over the course of the last several months, we have stood up a series of governance structures within the Department of Defense, putting the Undersecretary of the Navy as the sole point of accountability for all the issues that are being dealt with, to make sure that we are prioritizing, first of all, cataloging, prioritizing, and then sequencing the work that needs to happen. In terms of the work that our team has been doing, our Infrastructure Council that is under our EI&E office in OSD is currently at the tail end of filling out the entirety of what the full need of all of the different initiatives that need to happen there look like. We are feeding that up to the Guam Strategic Oversight Council for digestion and then for prioritization. And out of that comes the full plan.
Thank you, Mr. Owens. It's just critical timing, and we really want to help to get that money out to you. Just one final question for you, just a few seconds left. OCOLA is so important for us on Guam. The cost of living is extremely high. Everything is shipped in. We got deducted. It was how it was measured, but we really need that back. Can you tell us you're going to look at that and bring it back for us, please?
I'd be happy to work with our partners in PNR to work on that issue.
Thank you very much. Thank you to the panel. Mr. Chairman, I yield back. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moylan, and over to Mr. Davis from the great state of North Carolina, a state that I feel like I have literally walked with a very heavy rucksack in training. But over to you, Mr. Davis.
Hey, well, thank you for walking in North Carolina, Mr. Chair, to the ranking member, and to all of the guests, witnesses who are here today. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us and to provide us these important updates as it pertains to the state of our installation infrastructure. I want to travel back to North Carolina, if I may, to Seymour Johnson Air Force Base. On base, as there are often challenges that are posed on our bases in terms of health risk. One of the things that stood out to me when I visited Seymour Johnson Air Force Base was a deteriorating, in particularly the physical fitness center, the fitness center. And as we talk about recruitment, retention, readiness, for the fitness center itself to pose a risk, potentially, to members. What steps are we finding that the department's taken to try to address, in particularly unhygienic and aging physical fitness and equipment infrastructure that puts military personnel and their families at risk?
Rep. Davis, I understand that's a question for me.
Yes. I'm sorry, Mr. Chowdhury.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the question. First and foremost, safety is the number one priority for our men and women in uniform. So addressing safety concerns on the spot is the responsibility of the installation commander. I will take a note of that. I was not aware of a safety issue, so I'll make sure I take that baton and look into that for you. If that's okay, I'll get back to you on the details of that to include our plan for recovery. Second, if it's an infrastructure issue itself, we'll make sure that we take a look at it as a facility. We have a number of models, especially for fitness centers, that we've been utilizing across our installations to generate opportunities to update if funding is not available in a MILCON or FSRM direction. We know of some wings that are realizing operational energy savings, and in our portfolio we have opportunities to realize those savings and give those savings back to the unit itself. So this could be a candidate for that opportunity. But if you would, I'd like to take that back and focus on the fitness center at Seymour Johnson and give you a well-groomed plan to move forward with it.
Absolutely. And I do have one other follow-up here in particular. I remember when I was there too, going over to the Child Development Center because part of the roof was falling apart. And while I was there, I know this could not have been planned well. I'm out looking at the roof, and this 4-year-old child comes up to the window and waves at me with the biggest smile. But when I think about, broadly speaking, child development centers, how are we prioritizing them trying to get through this process, realizing the challenges that, are posing so many military families?
Thank you for that, Rep. Davis. So once again, on the safety piece, if there's a safety issue at our Child Development Center, it needs to be addressed that day. We cannot wrestle with any sort of ambiguity with that particular issue. And so I'll check back on the CDC as well and make sure that we're addressing it. More broadly on CDCs, the Department of the Air Force is embarking, in addition to the $1.1 billion in dormitory investments, another $600,000 in 19 different CDCs. So we are planning, if appropriated, to move forward with a large program to upgrade our CDCs. It could be anything from renovation to building all new ones. We have several scheduled plans. So we're going to aggressively get at this particular problem. We'll look and see. I can get back to you on what the plans are for the CDC at Seymour Johnson, and I'll take that back as a due out, but if that's okay with you. But I just want to let you know the department is committed to broadening our investments in CDCs going forward.
And Mr. Chair, I would just end by saying, I do appreciate, the dedicated work, and I do understand the challenges, and definitely look forward to connecting again. And thank you for your continued service. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Mr. Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank each of you for your service, and I have a special appreciation. I served 31 years myself, and to me, military service is very uplifting. And then all due to my wife, we have 4 sons who have served in Iraq, Egypt, and Afghanistan. And so over and over again, we've seen the positive side. And in particular, my Navy doctor's son served in Naples, Italy. And one of the benefits is that we now have 3 grandchildren who speak Italian. So, hey, I just want to, again, thank you for what's being done. I'm very grateful to represent Fort Jackson. We still have some trails that we need the VMI chairman to come and bring his rucksack. And and representing Fort Jackson and also nearby Shaw, the proverbial question is always a delay in having repairs. What is the department doing to ensure that maintenance requests are responded to, Mr. Secretary Owens, in regard to timing?
I think I'd start, and thank you for the question. I think I'd start, Representative Wilson, by pointing to the work that we are eager to get after relative to the sustainment management structure and sustainment management system, which gives us the ability to have asset level assessments so that we can understand what the ramifications of delay are better than we can right now. At a portfolio level, like I said earlier, we understand the sort of macro level challenge and the money problem, but to the specific example that Representative Davis gave about a failing roof in the CDC, I agree with Dr. Chowdhury that is not a thing that we can let sit for even a couple of hours. So the asset management approach will give us the ability to rack and stack these issues in a more deliberate and responsive way.
Well, it's just so for health and safety, we really appreciate expediting in every way. Additionally, Secretary Jacobson, indeed, reliable energy is a critical asset to ensure mission continuity at installations. In your statement, you mentioned the Army is working with privatized partners to increase housing sustainability and reduce installation energy consumption. Besides solar, what has the department done to consider other energy sources? I'm particularly interested in small modular reactors. To me, you would have energy security, you would have reliability, you would have I can list 100 things. And a great thing about a small modular reactor, I can see it as so helpful in the territory of Guam. When I think of how beautiful that territory is, and Congressman Moylan and I have discussed this, that indeed the beautiful beaches of Guam, Hawaii has copied this, and we need to have energy security. For Guam, I can see energy security for military installations like Fort Jackson. I previously represented Parris Island. So what are the efforts being made to multiple energy sources?
Congressman, thank you very much for that question. It's an important one. And I, too, am a big believer in exploring nuclear energy options on our installations wherever possible. I've stood up a multidisciplinary working group so that we can be prepared, assuming we get Army leadership approval, to move forward with exploring a request for proposal. I know the Air Force is a little bit ahead of us to place a small modular reactor on one of our bases. We're not quite there yet, but we're looking at every single issue. Where is it feasible? What are the licensing requirements? What are the needs? What are the state and local politics surrounding it? But we too agree that our energy future must include nuclear energy.
And I was really grateful last night to meet with the energy minister of Romania. And they are taking a lead, the country of Romania, on small modular reactors. And I just see such an opportunity that could be so beneficial for military installations, for energy independence and security. And then it has to be secure, too, with the perimeter. And all of that's in place. And so the small modular reactors, to me, would be an ideal way of addressing, because I'm very, very concerned with the number of terrorists who've come into our country across the border, that we've just got to have our military installations secure so that when, as the FBI has said, an attack is imminent, we would have energy security. With that, I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. And for 5 minutes questions, Mr. Vesey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank the panel for being here today to answer questions and about something that's really important. In 2021, I took the first CODAIL to Fort Hood. It was the first one that we did after COVID. And one of the things that we looked at when we were at Fort Hood, now Fort Cavazos, was the living conditions. And we had some good off-the-record conversations with enlistees and junior officers. And one of the areas that they consistently pointed out was how challenging it can be, particularly when you're trying to also raise a family for child care needs and things like that. For some cities, they just don't have adequate housing supply that is nearby. And so that puts a lot of pressure on them being able to perform up to where they need to. And then also when it comes to living, too, and I know that we're here to talk about the aging housing issue and how we can get those updated, but want to just continue to talk about just rising prices for military families. I led a letter last year we sent to Secretary Austin urging the DOD to allow families to buy groceries and other household goods from commissaries at cost, because in addition to housing, those things around food, around shelter, around child care, all those, they all tie into the importance of housing too. And so I just really want to urge you to continue to look in those places and how that complements housing. And in light of today's military recruitment challenges, we know that all of those things have to be addressed. And we've seen the photos where people have depicted living in subpar living conditions in barracks. And when you go to visit bases, they'll tell you that a lot of the housing on the bases is older and it needs to be updated, not just because it's old, but because of safety reasons as well, that it needs to be updated. Has your organization, and anybody can answer this, has your organization taken any steps to proactively manage and mitigate the public perception around these challenges, particularly when a lot of the recruits or potential recruits have heard a lot of these stories?
I'll take a first step and then ask my counterparts to join in. I want to thank Representative Davis and Strickland and Escobar, Moylan and Kiggins for the work that they've been doing on the Quality of Life panel. that stood up in response, I think, to a lot of the concerns that you've just expressed. That has created a companion effort within DoD, which is a joint, being led by our legislative affairs team, and includes personnel and readiness, it includes acquisitions and sustainment, and we have a regular set of meetings where we're focused on looking at the total the total quality of service that we are providing across all of our departments. We are incorporating many of those things that we've learned as a process, as part of that quality of life engagements that we've had with that subcommittee into the Tiger team that we're standing up for unaccompanied housing, because getting after those issues, addressing them head on is something that I think we can do better at. While we're fixing the problem, we can also make sure that we are highlighting the places where quality of service is something that we can be proud of. And I think the Navy's privatized unaccompanied barracks in San Diego are a great example of things that we can hold up and say, this is where we think we're headed. So with that, I'll turn it over to the rest of the folks.
Congressman, sorry. With respect to family housing, the Army has been very much out front in letting those companies know that if they are not fulfilling their obligations, we'll hold them in default of their leases and withhold their incentive payments until they get there. And I have personally issued default notices where circumstances required it because conditions were unacceptable and were not being addressed adequately. With respect to barracks, we're unfolding a huge program to get our barracks, as many as possible, into good quality, to take them out of the so-called Q3, Q4 bad quality, poor and failing, into good quality and keep them there. We're going to make sure that our dollars are invested wisely so that our soldiers have good living experiences.
Yeah, thank you. And let me just say this in closing, that in addition to the housing and trying to address the aging infrastructure as it relates to housing, and I talked about some of the other challenges as well. Please look at gas prices, particularly for military personnel that are stationed on the West Coast, because even if you receive a bump in your BAH, once you get there, if gas is $5, $6 a gallon like it was in some circumstances, it just eats it up. And I had a family that lives in my district that was stationed out at Edwards Air Force Base, and they wrote me all the time about how people were having to live in RVs because even with the bump in the BAH, they still could not afford to have housing around there. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Veazey. We're about to have votes called. If I just have a follow-on question and then a request. We had conversations last year and also with the service secretaries about, as we look at microgrids, as we look at resiliency on our bases, getting Chinese-made infrastructure out of our supply chains. I know that is a complicated issue. I fully recognize that. But we cannot have year after year, administration after administration, citing our number one adversary who is openly talking about replacing the United States, the decline of as a global hegemon, the decline of democracy, the decline of Western values, the rhetoric that we're seeing coming from Chairman Xi, coming from the CCP, and create dependency in our infrastructure on the Chinese Communist Party. So can you each talk to me about what you're doing? And I asked for specifics because last year it was, we understand it's an issue, we're looking at the issue. I get it. What are we doing in line with language that was in this NDAA? And if you disagree with the need to have domestically produced energy supplies, even if they're backup supplies, let me know. We can have that conversation offline. But I'll just start from a department-wide, Mr. Owens.
Thank you, Chairman Wallace. I wish we had more than 5 minutes to talk about this issue because you are right about how critical it is to our energy security and national security. From the standpoint of the way that we are partnering We have partnerships with our industrial-based policy counterparts that are focused on battery supply chain, looking at onshoring and friendshoring. Part of their industrial-based strategy that they just released earlier, I guess last month, was focused on that, and the work that the rest of the whole of government is doing on the Federal Consortium for Advanced Batteries and onshoring and friendshoring production capacities for those batteries is something that we are very engaged in. And I would say that the reason that we are so directly engaged is that this is not a problem for tomorrow as we build out the new energy infrastructure. It's a problem today for hundreds, if not thousands, of systems that rely on batteries that aren't produced in places that have secure supply chains. One specific example I can give you is the enforcement of Buy America provisions in a power purchase agreement that we just concluded with Duke Energy. I think that is the type of thing that we can be able to guide DoD dollars in the direction of U.S. manufacturing, and something that increases the demand signal for the market, number one, but also make sure that we are sending the larger signal to the rest of the nation that we are driving these issues forward.
Thank you for that, Mr. Owens. I think that's heading in the right direction. We'll continue to push from the committee's standpoint in terms of accelerating and helping you do that, because you're absolutely right. The department can create a demand signal that domestic producers can fill. Just from the services perspectives, anything to add to that? And I welcome specifics.
Chair Waltz, I'll say, here's a specific. Sure. If you're going to go for a particular contract in my particular portfolio, you're going to get down selected if you have components. That's it. You're out.
Now we're talking. That's great. Thank you. And then I just have a request for both you, Mr. Chaudhry. Forgive me if I mispronounced your name earlier, and Ms. Jacobson and Mr. Owens. We have probably the most high-profile Child Development Center at Camp Bull Simons at Eglin Air Force Base. Frankly, I don't think this committee with the Senate and conference should be really wrestling over a CDC. Either it is safe to be and to operate and to be on Camp Bull Simons, given its proximity to a range, or it's not. But parsing, we have a church there, we have a playground there, but we can't have a child development center there, I think, are just all kinds of bizarre distinctions. So I'd ask you guys to resolve this issue. Either it's safe to be there and the special operators need a place that their families don't have to drive hours to drop off their kids, and that they will be prioritized, which they would not be in town, so to speak, or they're not. So if we could get that resolved this year, that would be that's just my request of you. That would be fantastic. So thank you. And Ranking Member.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for bringing up the energy issue. We were going to go by that. We should not. You brought it up. Mr. Owens, you spoke to the Buy America requirements. There's a huge loophole in the Department of Defense that can waive the Buy America requirements. We need to close that. If we are able to enforce the Buy America requirements, then the Chairman's concern about Chinese batteries and the like will move past that, because they'll have to be made in America or friendly countries nearby. Thank you for bringing that up. The energy issues, resiliency, we've talked about that. We can go on for several hours. I notice we don't have several hours. We may have even a few seconds. I've asked each of you to share with me, and I would also request that you share with the chair and the staff, specific requests that you need in this coming NDAA to carry out the tasks that you have described to us that you want to do. Housing, energy, installations, on and on, all of those things. We're going to be working on the NDAA next month. So I think I said March 15th is my deadline. The chairman may have a March 1st deadline. We need to know what you need to carry out your task. With that, Mr. Chairman.